What's up, everybody? Before we get into this week's episode, just want to let you know that it's presented by our friends over at Pentz Homes, Pentz homes.com. Cannot thank the team, Nate and the team over at Pentz Homes enough for supporting what we're doing here with Soda Soccer and the 10,000 Pitches podcast. Nate and his team are not just fully ingrained in the Minnesota soccer community, supporting teams like Minnesota Aurora, Minneapolis City, our friends over at Equal Time Soccer as well, and of course us here at Soda Soccer, but they're also big fans of Minnesota United. And even outside of the soccer, they can help you, sell your home for top dollar, get in a new home at a rate that's going to be within your budget. They're very good at what they do. They have the team, they have the experience, they have the technology to make your home buying or selling or both experience, as stress-free as humanly possible. It's not easy, but Nate and his team are able to kind of take up as much of that anxiety off your shoulders as humanly possible. So if you are looking to buy a new home, sell your current home, do both. I highly recommend that you check out the team over at Pentz Homes, Pentz homes.com. You can see it right there if you're watching live. Pentz homes.com is the website. Just go there, and don't take it from me. I know I just gave you my recommendation, but you can take it from the hundreds and hundreds of people who have worked with Nate and his team at Pentz Homes and have left them a 5-star review. Check them out on Google, check them out on their website. Or if I've sold you here and you want to just make direct contact with them, you can email Nate directly, Nate, N-A-T-E, at pentzhomes.com. Again, huge thanks to Nate and the team at Pentz Homes for supporting us here on the 10,000 Pitches podcast. Now let's get into the episode. All right, what is up? Change the overlay here. There we go. Welcome in to the 10,000 Pitches podcast, or 10K Live if you are tuning in on patreon.com/Soda Soccer. My name is Jeremy Rushing. Alongside me, as always, Dominic Bisogno for episode 133 of the 10,000 Pitches pod. We are, of course, presented by sodasoccer.com. And of course, just as I mentioned, big thanks to Nate and the team at Pentz Homes for helping us out this week as well. Dom, how we doing?
I'm doing great, Jeremy. I look forward to doing episode 133 with you today, and also episode 134, because that's how much shit we have to talk about.
Yes, it's almost 2 episodes in one. Strap in, people. If you're watching live, hopefully you don't have much else going on this morning, because we're likely to, it's 10:03 a.m. Central. We may take you right into your lunch break with the 10,000 Pitches podcast this week. That's how much there is to talk about. But first, some housekeeping items. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, if you're not subscribed to the podcast feed, please do so. Lets you know whenever we drop a new episode or a new video, new episode of the 10,000 Pitches podcast, new episode of Post Loons, new exclusive interview. All of that is available on our podcast feed on our YouTube channel, but not always dropping on the same exact day every week. So subscribing either place lets you know when you can get that content ASAP. Also, if you're not a Patreon subscriber, maybe you're listening or watching after the fact, after the live version here, but you want to support our work, you can do that over at patreon.com/Soda Soccer and support us for as low as $3 a month. As we record here, Dom, on Thursday morning, we are just one patron away from our March goal. We wanted to hit 50 patrons on patreon.com/Soda Soccer by the end of March. We are at 49 as we record here today. So that means if you want to be number 50, if you want to be that person that, hits the jackpot, if you will, the alarm bells will go ringing. We'll shout you out on social media. We'll do everything we have to do to make it a big deal. Hit us up, patreon.com/Soda Soccer. You can support our work for as low as $3 a month. But if you're in the $5 or $10 tiers, that's where you get all that good bonus and exclusive content as well. So make sure you're doing that. Or if you're already a patron and you like what we're doing, be a friend, tell a friend who you think might benefit from becoming a patron over at patreon.com/Soda Soccer. Speaking of patrons, got 3 to shout out this week. Tim, appreciate Tim. He actually hosts the Wolf of Pod Street podcast for the Timberwolves. Big Timberwolves guy is Tim, so appreciate him supporting the show. We also have Matt Pravatsky, our friend Matt Pravatsky over at Equal Time Soccer, who just became a patron this week. We appreciate his support as well. So yeah, really, and then James Bischoff, that's the one. James Bischoff is the other one who supported us this week. So if you want to join James, Tim, or Matt, make sure you become a patron over at patreon.com/sodasoccer. We'd really appreciate that support. Okay, Dom, without further ado, let's jump into this. There's a ton to get to. Minnesota United, MNUFC 2, Loons abroad, Minnesota Aurora, a ton of lower league news. UPSL schedules out. Minneapolis City making news. It's a lot, but we're going to jump right into this, and hopefully you're along for the ride here on patreon.com/sodasoccer, or watching on our YouTube channel, or listening after the fact, because it's going to be a long one this week, guys, but it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, Minnesota United. Here we go. Let's get it started. We're going to start with the 1-1 draw. It was a 1-1 draw with Vancouver Whitecaps at Allianz Field. Down 7 starters. The lineup was a 4-4-2 from Heath. It was Mender Garcia and Luis Amarilla up top. Cam Dunbar was at the right wing with Fraga on the left. Dotson and Trapp in the middle. DJ Taylor actually was moved over to left back for this one, with Zarek Valentin sticking at his right back spot. And then Brent Coleman at right center back alongside Mickey Tapias. There was some speculation that with this particular roster, a 4-4-2 might be the move from Heath. I sort of gave my off the cuff prediction earlier. I thought they might stick with the 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3 hybrid. I thought they maybe had the personnel to make that happen, but I was intrigued when I saw the 2-striker formation and how Heath set his lineup up on Saturday. What did you think when you saw that formation come out, Dom?
It piqued my interest. I actually think that formation, even though the game didn't necessarily go great, was actually a really promising way to approach this game. Playing Garcia and Amarilla together up front, I think that it provided an opportunity to try some things that people have been wondering about for a while, that we've been wondering about for a while. And while the game, again, didn't necessarily go as planned in the end, I actually thought that there were aspects of it that showed that formation has promise as an option for the team. It would be interesting to see, for example, what a game in this formation would look like with all the starting options available. Potentially that goes actually quite well. So I thought it was good to, even if it ends in the draw in the end, I thought it was actually quite good, probably even just at least for Heath and the sort of the coaching room, to have that data to know what that formation looks like with at least about half of their starters and a lot of their bench players. So it was something that was talked about ahead of time. It didn't necessarily surprise me, but I was intrigued I was intrigued when I saw it.
Yeah, and looking back at how the match played out, obviously there was a little bit of discombobulation, as you expect, when these guys really haven't shared the field together as a full unit. That was rolled out there on Saturday. One of the things I really liked, formationally, is we saw exponentially more activity from both Mender Garcia and Luis Amarilla in this formation than we have, maybe the entire season before this combined. I know Amarilla didn't get on the score sheet. I know, Garcia, his goal was a header off a cross. He didn't necessarily make something happen with his foot. But in terms of activity, in terms of running, in terms of just covering ground and trying to make things happen, we saw a lot more from the striker position on Saturday than we had in weeks past. Now, does a 4-4-2 with both Amarilla and Garcia starting, does that work with a full strength Minnesota United team? Is Tanya Lewis-Shea, does Adrian Heath, does this team trust him enough to be that primary, up top depth option? Can Saint-Ben Jeong be a backup striker option with that, in mind as well? That's something to consider. But I'm with you, Dom. I saw enough from this, especially when we were just talking about Amarilla and Garcia up top, that I kind of want to see more of it. And as you mentioned, with a full strength roster, to see what it can really be. Do Heath and the coaching staff and everybody else, do they believe that there is depth enough up top to start 2 strikers? I don't know. That is a question, I guess. But yeah, I was very, very intrigued, and I think there's a lot to take from it positively, as I mentioned on Post Loons after the match on Saturday as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, that's a good point. Of when you have everybody available, do you potentially move somebody else into that front too?
Yeah.
Might as well also shout out last year's electric striker Robin Lod.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically speaking, and this is usually how 4-4-2 works, one of those strikers is going to be closer to goal, and one of those strikers is going to be more deep playing, which is kind of what Lud's thing when he was a striker. And that's honestly, when we saw the most goal scoring production from this team in somewhat recent memory, it was Robin Lod playing the false nine where that happened, right? So it's interesting. The possibilities, it's one of those things we always ask at the beginning of every season. And he always finds his spot and finds his, role in the team. But I feel like it could be a scheduled annual tweet at this point early on in the season. Where does Robin Lod fit in this roster? Where is he best fit for this team? Is it central midfield? Is it on the wing? Is it an attacking mid? Is it up top? Like, there's so many different ways he can play, which is great, but it's kind of similar to Dotson where, jack of all trades, master of none can work against you in that respect as well. But yeah, interested to see how things look against St. Louis on Saturday with that full strength roster back. And we'll get to previewing the St. Louis match in a minute, but let's kind of, again, rewind a little bit and talk about how the match played out against Vancouver. This to me is kind of a real point of concern. And I could tell Adrian Heath is not happy with this and, frustrated with this particular aspect. Loons nearly concede off the opening kickoff once again for the second straight home match. Brian White hits the crossbar 40 seconds in. And it was kind of an awkward question for me to ask Heath after, because I mean, it's something that's kept going. I'm like, how do you fix this? Like, keeps coming up. Like, how does this happen? And his goal and his response was really like, it's not really anything tactically that we can do. It's more of a mindset. It's more of being ready off the jump. And the Loons, once again, in both halves in this one, caught on the back foot right away. This is something they have to tighten up when they play teams like LAFC, Seattle, even St. Louis City this weekend. Teams that really have the firepower to make you pay in those circumstances. The teams that you really need to do everything you possibly can for 90 plus minutes to keep them off the board. You have to tighten this up. You have to find a way to be more alert off the kickoff. And again, I don't know enough to know if there's anything tactically that they can change to alleviate this issue. But from my surface level perspective, it really seems more like a mindset and being mentally ready and focused in the game right from the start.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any particular tactical change you can make that would affect that, in the sense that, I mean, unless the coach is telling the players to line up along the sideline at the kickoff, if they're in their starting positions, frankly, it's the most like tactically neutral point, in the game.
Yep.
There's not really anything you can change about how they are prepared for that moment. But clearly there's some sort of energy problem that is allowing teams quite repetitively to get chances. Thankfully, they have yet to score one of those, but to your point, some of these better teams might. And on the road to St. Louis, for example, that could be a momentum killer, 30 seconds into the game. So that is concerning.
If a similar circumstance happens against like a Seattle, for example, Jordan Morris may score twice before this team wakes up. I mean, right. you really got to be alert against those better teams, and hopefully that's something they can tweak and change and improve moving forward. But let's skip ahead to the 40th minute. This was the good news. Zarek Valentin plays a cross up for Garcia, who finishes the header to put the Loons ahead. I've really been impressed with the way this team has been able to cross the ball and put service into the box this season, whether it's a corner kick, indirect free kick, set piece, or just crossing in general. I thought that aspect of Minnesota United's of their play, of their attack, has been really, really solid this season. We've seen it from Fragapane. Now we see it from Valentin. And this is going to be really crucial. I've asked Adrian Heath about this in training, and he's sort of played it off as, crossing is always important. Being able to cross the ball effectively is always important. But the way I look at it, when you're missing that one playmaker, like they're missing in Reynoso, you have to be able to expand the ways in which you can get chances. And crossing the ball is, it goes without saying. It sounds super surface level, but it really is an effective way to do that. And it can be that difference maker, and it can be that equalizer, right? And I think if they can keep this up for the rest of the season and have that be an effective way in which they're able to generate chances and goals, that's really going to help them sort of reach the goals they want to reach without that one individual playmaker in Reynoso in the lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to Heath's point, obviously, yeah, crosses, corner kicks are a pretty essential part of the game. But at the same time, there's a pretty large difference between teams that just dump balls into the box blindly and teams that put good balls into the box. And
that's been Minnesota. The former has been Minnesota United in past seasons.
Right.
You know, how many times have we seen 24 crosses in a match, but absolutely nothing to show for it?
Right,
that was pretty par for the course in the past. So it's very, it's very encouraging to know that maybe that's been tightened up.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's good to see. I think that's been one of the positives of Valentine's introduction to the team, is that he's had some really good service, or provided rather some really good service. So, and yeah, you're seeing, we talk about this like every episode since the season started, but you're seeing a lot of guys getting sort of these like set piece fox in the box goals that you wouldn't necessarily normally expect to. But I think, obviously part of that is their efforts, the Planwanes and the Garcias. But part of that is also good service to sort of put them in the right position to get a goal you might not expect them to get. So, that's been a very encouraging part of Minnesota United so far.
Most definitely. Looking ahead to the second half here, we've talked about them almost conceding off the second half kickoff as well. But let's skip ahead just past the hour mark. Both Emmanuel Iwe and Zayden Bello, normally MNUFC 2 players, but they were signed to sort of one-day pro contracts, if you will, or one-day MLS contracts, if you will, to be able to play in this one for Minnesota United and make their debuts. They both debuted just past the 60-minute mark. Mikhail Marquez also coming on. We'll get to him in just a minute. I was encouraged with what I saw from Iwe specifically. He comes on and initially sort of finds the ball at his feet, streaking towards goal. And you could see maybe he wasn't necessarily prepared for that moment a little bit, because I don't know if he necessarily made the right decision with the ball when he was there. But he was able to get into the attacking third. Adrian Heath said this week you could see his presence sort of giving the team and the crowd a lift in that stage of the game as well. But on the flip side of this is where we really saw the lack of cohesion, time together on the pitch every day in training. I think this is kind of where we really saw that, really come to a head. And in an important part of the match too, because I think you could argue that the last 20 plus minutes in a match where you're trying to hold on to a lead, that's the part where it's the most important to be organized, to be fluid, to be working as one singular unit when you're sort of packing it in and absorbing pressure like that. And with so many new pieces and pieces to the puzzle that were in there, whether they're making their Minnesota United debuts, whether they're making their pro debuts, it just didn't seem necessarily realistic that would be able to work as functionally as it needed to in that stage of the game. And we saw, they just absorbed a ton of pressure from Vancouver down the stretch. And then eventually leads to the final sequence where Marquez gets the ball and he's trying to end the game, but he's juggling it and ends up being a turnover. Vite gets the ball on the right for Vancouver, sends in a last ditch effort cross into the box, goes to the back post where Sam Bescher is there to put it away. And that's the equalizer. Give me your thoughts before we get to maybe the controversy surrounding this, if you will. Just give me your thoughts on kind of that last 20 or so minutes for Minnesota United.
Yeah, couple things. So yeah, first of all, you have those guys make their debuts, Iwe, Bello, and Marquez. I think that's a great moment for all three of those guys. I'm really happy for Emmanuel Iwe. Really cool to see a guy that I used to watch for free at high school fields play for Minnesota United. So that's awesome. And of the three, I think you kind of already said, of the three, I think he's the one that I was happiest with. Maybe even a little unlucky to not get a goal involvement out of his 20 or so minutes. He had some decent moves. Unfortunately, overall, there was a serious drop. It's interesting because, to be perfectly frank with you, I was not super happy with Bello's performance.
Yeah.
I did not love a lot of it. At the same time, to give credit where it's due, it's worth noting, I don't even know how this is possible. He's actually tied for the most successful tackles for Minnesota United in that game. At 2, which is not a great number. No. But so even though to the eye test, frankly, I didn't love what I saw from him, to his credit, he actually, some of the numbers actually were quite beneficial to him. That being said, yeah, things got scrappy. People got a bit out of position. It occurred to me afterwards, towards the end, there was a moment where Emmanuel Iwe had a shot that he took that ended up kind of bending upper left past the goal. That I know some people that wanted him to sort of hold the ball. It was an okay shot. It occurred to me afterwards that he was cutting in from the right wing, but he was playing on the left.
Yep.
So towards the end of that game, people were kind
of a lot of discombobulation. Yeah,
doing what they wanted to do. I think. Well, I don't know how quickly you want to transition to the controversy, quote unquote, but I think that people ended up really focusing in on the last like minute of that game as like where it all collapsed with the dribbling and the extra time given and all that. I do think it's important to note that statistically, Minnesota United had a bad game.
23-8 shots in favor of Vancouver.
Yeah. Vancouver had, I listed this out. Vancouver had more shots on target, more passes, more completed passes, higher expected goal rate, more interceptions, more duels won, fewer cards, more corners, and more possession. That's a team that should be winning the game. I mean, those numbers win you games.
Look at the shots and the XG specifically. I encourage anybody watching this or listening who hasn't checked the hub stats to look at this. Yeah. Shots 23-8. Shots on target 5-2. Not that much of a discrepancy. XG 2.04 to 0.63. Like that is, or 0.67, excuse me. That is, I mean, that's dominance from one team over the other. And you look at that, a lot of that largely came in the last half hour of this match. You know, heading into the hour mark, you would say on the field, back and forth, things were pretty even. Feeling good about where, you know, Minnesota United standing in the game. But man, that last half hour, it was all Vancouver. It was absolutely all Vancouver for the last 37, 38 minutes.
Right.
And the dam's going to break at some point, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing is, you know, again, I can understand people's frustration with the decision Marquez made at that moment, although to be perfectly frank, I don't. I am far less critical of it. I think if the time is called accurately, he's doing exactly what he should be doing in that situation. Yeah. But you know, it is what it is. But I think that it's important to understand that, like, statistically, overall, the team had built up that moment with the performance, with the numbers that it was giving to Vancouver. Minnesota United were winning that game up until the last minute, but and credit to them for getting that lead and defending it as long as they did. But to be clear, numbers-wise, that shouldn't have been happening.
No.
And I think that's important to note, you know, beyond just guy made a mistake, they scored at the end. And, you know, of course, there's the factor of the 7 players missing. There's the factor of the formation change. There's all sorts of things that contribute to that. But I do, again, think that it's important to acknowledge not just what one player may or may not have done, or one referee may or may not have done in the last part of the game, but that the team overall, the numbers were actually quite poor, especially for a home game. And at the end of the day, that's going to bite you in the back at some point. And it just happened to do it for them in the 97th minute, but it was coming for a while.
Okay, so let's talk about the stoppage time. I'm going to preface this by saying this is not an excuse for Minnesota United giving up an equalizer. But I do think that Pro needs to take a look at what happened here and make adjustments for the future. Because what this comes down to is a communication issue to me. So let's go through this. 6 minutes was put on the board for stoppage time. No subs. No injuries in the stoppage time period. No goals in the stoppage time period. No true stoppages in stoppage time, right? At about 96:30, Clint Irwin takes a goal kick. Everybody, us in the press box, I think everybody, probably even the Vancouver players, were saying, okay, this is probably it. Right. JJ Adams, who covers who covers the Whitecaps for the Vancouver Sun, tweeted this in response to an Andy Grader tweet. He said, quote, "Fourth official told the Caps coaches there would be an extra minute because of the time wasting by Minnesota players." Okay, fine. If you want to deem what Minnesota United was doing as time wasting, I didn't see anything super egregious there personally. But if you're going to crack down on time wasting and whatever, okay, I'm not mad at that really. What this comes down to, though, is a communication issue, because I asked both Adrian Heath and Clint Irwin this week in training. I asked Heath, I said, hey, here's kind of what we know. The Whitecaps coaches said that they were told that there would be an extra minute of stoppage. Were you or your staff told the same thing? He said, no, we had no communication there. Right. I asked Clint Irwin, were you given any indication from the referees that there was additional time being added, that goal kick wouldn't be the end of the match? And Irwin said no. And Irwin, this is a guy with a ton of experience in Major League Soccer, a ton of experience between the posts. He has seen a lot of things, been in a lot of games. And he said the motion the referee gave him when giving the goal kick indicated that the whistle would be blown. Like, hey, the motion was, hey, take this goal kick and I'm going to blow the whistle. It's going to be over. That obviously did not happen.
Right.
So you have the Vancouver sideline being told that there would be an extra minute because of time wasting, but Minnesota's sideline not being given that same information. And Clint Irwin even asking at 96:30 the referee, hey, is this it? And the referee giving him a visual indication that it would, when in reality, 90 more seconds were going to be played in this match. I'm not going to say that Minnesota United was robbed in this one. There are a lot of people who respond to me on Twitter saying, play to the whistle, play to the whistle. I get that you do need to play until the final whistle. I'm not necessarily saying this is the reason Minnesota, did not win, did not get 3 points from this one, because we talked about a lot of the issues during the match, or a lot of the door being beaten down until it was finally put down by Vancouver. But like this, from just an organizational referee perspective, seems to me pretty unacceptable and pretty egregious, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you should at the very least, you should be communicating the same information to both benches, because I mean, this is hypothetical, but if Heath knows that, if he knows that there is a considerable portion of time being added when the ball, for example, gets to Marquez at about I think it was about at the halfway line, more or less, and Marquez maybe starts to dribble it or whatever. If Heath knows what time is at play, he perhaps yells at Marquez not to do that.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. Or
if it's somehow communicated to on the field before that, like, hey, there's another minute being played here.
Right.
Maybe Marquez puts it in the 7th row instead of trying to juggle it, Right.
So, it's like you said, it's not necessarily an excuse or anything like that, but time is kept in sport for a reason.
Yeah.
So time is an important thing, and I mean that lack of communication clearly affects the last moments of that game, which is unfortunate. So I agree that there should probably be some sort of discussion with the referees of that game, at the very least, just to clarify what wasn't done, what should and shouldn't be done. I mean, it felt like a lot of time to be added in the first place, but obviously, like, that's for them to decide. But if you're going to then pile on more time, you have to make sure that both teams are aware of that, especially if it's not, obviously sometimes refs give an extra 5 seconds or something, but if you're going to actually add a minute or some sort of actual measurable amount of time, obviously both coaches need to know about that. So it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that it creates this moment that changes this game that otherwise was going to be this kind of, gritty, hey, we did it kind of thing, into a far more negative result. Just very unfortunate that miscommunication took place.
Yeah, we did not get a post-game press conference from Vandy Sartini, so we're not able to kind of directly talk to him about this. But I do want to give credit to Adrian Heath in the post-game press conference. He seemed pissed, like as anybody would, but he did not once use that as an excuse. He actually called back on something he was saying all week last week to us during training, was, in regards to missing the 7 starters, is, no excuses. Like, there are no excuses this weekend. He backed that up after the game on Saturday. Said, I said no excuses all week long. That is still my mindset even after this, not using that as an excuse. But he did seem pissed. And he did tell us after, during that he received no explanation, at least up until that point, and was given no communication as to why, 96 minutes, 6 minutes of stoppage time were shown and a goal was being scored, 7:32 into stoppage. Right. And so that to me is the issue. It's not so much that the time was added. It's not so much that they're, the subjectivity on what's time wasting and what's not, I do think is an issue that probably needs to be resolved at some point. But to me, the big issue here is the communication and how lopsided that communication was in terms of being shown. Because I mean, in a game, as you just alluded to this, Dom, in a game where the only one who knows how much time is left is the referee, there's no scoreboard. There's no, hey, this is how much stoppage we're adding to the stoppage. Like, there's no clock that's continuing to be added to that everybody can see. Like, it's pretty damn important that the referee communicates as much as he can about what's happening. Or if he's not going to communicate about what's happening, he needs to just not communicate it to anybody. Like, the referee doesn't necessarily, he's not entitled to tell, who's anyone about more time or what's being added or whatever. It's again kind of the unfortunate realities of soccer is the ref is not entitled to these things. But okay, then don't tell anybody. Like I would love to over communicate and say, hey, this is how much time we're adding, whatever, but you can't just give that communication to one team and not the other. Like that's not a good look at all.
Yeah. No, it's frustrating. It's just very frustrating.
But anyways, so here we are, 1-1 draw. I think a lot more positives than negatives to take away from this match. I do think the performance overall is probably as good as we could have asked for, given the personnel that were on the field. No disrespect to them, but again, just as a unit, this is the first time a lot of these guys were on the field together in that kind of environment. So I mean, it wasn't necessarily the well-oiled machine that we maybe would see with a full strength squad. So a lot of credit due to some of these guys who were making their debuts. And you know what, if you were to tell me before the match it would end in a 1-1 draw, I probably would have taken that, given the absences, given everything involved in that. So so now Minnesota United comes into this match with St. Louis. Of a possible 12 points, they've gotten 8. So I mean that's good. I think that's when you look at sort of this stretch of the season, on the road to Dallas, on the road to Colorado, home against the Red Bulls, home against Vancouver. You're feeling good about your standing, currently sitting 4th in the West, but you do travel on the road to a team that has started their MLS expansion season 5-0-0 in St. Louis City. They throttled Real Salt Lake 4-0 over the weekend. One of the more dominant performances of the early portion of the season. This is a good St. Louis team. I don't think this is being we'll get to some of the fortunate things that have happened over the course of these matches in a minute, but I think all in all, like, this team is very well put together. They have some really good players. Joao Klaus has been immense up top for them so far this season. This is going to be with presumably full strength or near full strength Minnesota United roster back for this one. I'm actually really excited for this. I think it's going to be a big measuring stick for this team, and I'm excited to see how this Loons team stacks up against the Supporter Shield leaders right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a fascinating matchup. I think for all the negatives that the Loons fan base might be feeling after the Vancouver game, to your point, you're undefeated after 4 games in a season where everyone was concerned we wouldn't be able to score. We've scored in every game.
Yep.
There's some positives. There's some reasons to be hopeful, excited about the St. Louis game, but yeah, obviously it's gonna be a huge challenge. St. Louis have joined that sort of cast of expansion teams that hit the ground running right away in the first season, and to your point, and you alluded that there's been some moments where they've perhaps been a little lucky, but at the same time they're earning their wins as much as anybody else. And I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see what Minnesota can do defensively. Frankly, I think the defense is going to be as much of a topic of conversation as it was this week, even if in a different context, just in that we're going to need to see a really top performance defensively from Minnesota to really get anything from a St. Louis team that is just beating anybody that tries to do anything to them. So,
and they're going to have to take care of the ball. the Loons too.
Yeah.
I mean, they're, I think, near, if not at the bottom in passing percentage so far this season in the league, 65.2%. It's not nowhere near where you want to be at this point of the season. And even when you take out the snow opener, which was kind of an oddity, you're still only right around like 72 or 73%. So it's not like it's, you know, giving you that much more of a boost. And speaking of, this is not the reason, I'm not saying this is the reason that St. Louis City has started 5-0-0, but there is this phenomenon that has sort of happened over the early part of the season. There's this odd trend that, I mean, they're getting the ball passed to them like directly in the final third and getting like gifted goals from this. Now, I've sort of weirdly broached the topic with Adrian Heath. I was trying, like, how do I ask this? How do I ask this question? But I sort of just asked him, like, you know, how, like, from what you've seen, is this something they're doing? Like, do they deserve credit for this? Or is this just sort of a coincidence? And he kind of responded saying, we're going to look at it on film this week. It's something we're going to bring up. It's something that we're going to talk about. It's something that we're going to spend time investing into, you know, looking at their setup, looking at their pressing setup, and see if this is something that, you know, we need to really be watching out for. Because again, you know, it could be where Klaus is just sort of really, really poaching in an area where, you know, defenses aren't used to an opposing striker being. And, you know, when you factor that in to Minnesota United's struggles, you know, stringing passes together and connecting on passes this season, you know, that area of the match, even if it's not just specifically, hey, don't pass the ball directly to them in your defensive third, even if it's just like, hey, take care of the ball, like that, I think the match is really going to hinge on that particular aspect.
No, that's fair. Yeah, and I think, you know, I've only seen parts of St. Louis City games, but you know, there is something that can happen when you're playing the press in a certain intensity. I can even think of other teams that do high pressing, like Liverpool, for example, that, you know, you can have situations where it looks like the team is giving them the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what's happening. It's positional. It's the way they're taking up space. It causes mistakes that look like they're getting past the ball to go in on goal.
Yeah.
So that very well might just be the nature of it. But yeah, this is going to be a game, you know, you bring up the passing percentage. I thought it was fascinating. This Vancouver game, there was like a stat that stood out to me as a emblem of this problem. On multiple places, on SofaScore and FootMob, all over the place, Valentin got player of the game at least for Minnesota United.
Yep.
He had, depending on which one you looked at, he had 50 or less % passing accuracy.
I mean, it was his turnover in the first minute that led to that Brian White off the crossbar.
So, you know, that is very much and there was no snow in this game. So
no snow.
That is very much a part of the, and I don't mean that to be picking on him specifically. It just happened to be that stat was, you know, all his other stats were good. So, but yeah, you know, that reflects that there is this sort of ball problem in terms of passing accuracy, in terms of knowing when and when not to go for certain plays, when to take risks and not take risks that Minnesota is having. So they're going to need a lot less of that against St. Louis, to your point.
Yeah. So, I think one of the things in terms of that phenomenon specifically where it might not come into play in this one, and I don't want to like jinx it, knock on wood, but Minnesota doesn't build out of the back very often, right? They press high themselves. They try to force midfield turnovers. If the ball is deep in the final third, they usually boot it away. Dane St. Clair usually boots it away off goal kicks. So we'll see if that comes into play, but I think in general, you know, taking care of the ball and making sure that you are connecting on passes and not turning the ball over is going to be a huge factor in this one for sure. Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Central Time is the kickoff. We will have post Loons. It'll be myself and John Marthaler doing post Loons because Jacob Schneider is going to be down in St. Louis for this one. We are sending Jacob down to St. Louis for the Loons' first ever match at St. Louis City SC, MLS match anyways. So that is going to be a lot of fun. You know, we're going to have some great content from him on site in St. Louis. So again, kind of just yet another reason, if you want to support our work, support our sending Jacob down there. It's not cheap to do so. I'm just going to put that out there right now. You know, support our work on Patreon, patreon.com/SodaSoccer. You can get in for as low as $3 a month. Okay, let's talk about the Loons international break. The Minnesota was down 7 starters in this one because they had a lot of guys, playing for their respective countries. Michael Boxall played the last 7 minutes of New Zealand's 0-0 draw with China, and then started and played the entirety of the Kiwis' 2-1 win over China. So 2 matches between New Zealand and China there. Dane St. Clair was on the bench against Curacao in Nations League A. He was also on the bench against Honduras. Canada do make the League A championship semifinals with that 4-1 win over Honduras. But in that Honduras match, it was Joseph Rosales who actually got the assist off a corner kick for Honduras' own goal in that 4-1 loss to Canada. I don't have any real data to back this up, Dom, but I'm here to dub Minnesota United the deepest corner kicking roster in the footballing world. They didn't. Franco Fragapane, not the team's first choice corner kick taker. He has been amazing. Joseph Rosales can now put it on a plate on corner kicks. If Mano Reynoso comes back, then obviously he's there as well. We've seen what Kervin Arriaga can do at set pieces. I mean, you have about 4 or 5 guys, it seems, who can really take quality corners and send in quality crosses and send in quality service, which, I kind of joke about it, but at the same time, it's a huge plus to have on this team.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you look at where the goals are coming from, that's going to be a huge asset. And then, of course, you have guys like Valentine and Taylor that can do some good service. So, this team very much is going to need to make the most of the talent it has in terms of serving balls and from set pieces or otherwise from out wide. Absolutely.
Arriaga started in the 1-0 friendly win over El Salvador. Rosales played the last 10 minutes in that one. And then Arriaga did start against Canada as well. Honduras, though, even with the 4-1 loss to Canada, they do finish second in that particular group and do qualify for the Gold Cup. So congratulations to them. Bongi Hlongwani made 1 start and played 97 minutes between 2 games. It was a 2-2 draw and a 2-1 win against Liberia. South Africa are now in a great position to qualify for AFCON, the African Cup of Nations. 1 game left against Morocco a little bit later on in the spring. Robin Lod started both Euro qualifier games for Finland, played 164 minutes in total. It was a 3-1 loss to Denmark and then a 1-0 win over Northern Ireland. So a bit of a mixed start to the campaign for the Finns there. Kamar Lawrence, 24 minutes for Jamaica and an impressive 2-2 draw with Mexico. Jamaica did not win the group, but they are confirmed for the next Gold Cup. And then Malik Jesse Khan from MNUFC 2 on the bench for both Nations League B games for Trinidad and Tobago. The first one was a 3-0 win over the Bahamas, a 1-1 draw with Nicaragua. No minutes played, but maybe he should have gotten in, Dom, because Trinidad and Tobago missed promotion to League A by a single point. Maybe Jesse could have been the difference maker there.
Yeah, that was a heartbreaker. I watched part of that game. Trinidad and Tobago actually scored a stoppage time goal in that last game against Nicaragua, and then it got ruled off for a handball. So they thought they'd won the group at the very end of the whole campaign, and then it didn't work out. So, but yeah, good to see guys out there playing for their countries. There were a couple players that didn't play much that you wonder if maybe they could have stayed, but
yeah.
But that's always what's going to happen when you have a bunch of guys leave for international break. There's always going to be a couple that you question. Oh well, maybe they could have just left them play for Minnesota, but no, I mean, really good performances from a couple of these guys, and really hoping Hlongwani stands out to me. I hope that South Africa can keep up their momentum and make the AFCON. I think that would be a really cool opportunity for him. But yeah.
Adrian Heath did say that with Bongi playing in Africa in this one kind of far away, he might not get back until Thursday, and then he's still got to get reacclimated, shake off the jet lag, whatever. And with Sangbin Jeong likely ready for Saturday, and this is actually something we haven't got to. This will be our kind of last piece of Loons news before we switch gears. Sangbin Jeong did have a successful visa appointment in Canada on over the weekend. I believe his appointment was officially on Sunday. Anyways, maybe Monday. But anyways, it was a successful appointment. So he was just waiting to get his passport stamped and head back to Minnesota. Once he returns, he's good to go. Fully cleared, gets the all good. So if he's able to do that early enough in the week, or even just in general before Saturday, I think it's highly likely we see Sangbin Jeong get his first MNUFC appearance on Saturday. And with Bongi playing 97 minutes and maybe not even getting back until Thursday, I also think it's likely we could see Sangbin get the start for Minnesota on Saturday, which, I mean, you're already seeing that signing and that presence kind of paying huge dividends from a depth standpoint, being able to have, a presumably quality player being able to enter for somebody who might not be fully fit and ready to return for the Loons on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if he can kind of gel with the team quickly or even mildly for that game, I mean, that's a great way to sort of mix things up for St. Louis and provide them with something they might not necessarily be completely prepared for. So, yeah, I mean, if that's how that plays out, obviously unfortunate to not have everybody available, but that could potentially be a sort of a silver lining benefit to that change up in the 11.
Yeah, and not saying that Bongi's not going to be available, but he did say with him returning late and being so far away that his availability or how much he plays could be impacted there. So we'll have to see how the roster is put together for Saturday at St. Louis City. Again, post Loons coming away after that one, 7:30. Man, do we have a lot of lower league news to get to, Dom. 46 minutes into the show, and we have not even really scratched the surface. We've got Minnesota United talk done, but we have MNUFC 2, we have Minnesota Aurora, we have UPSL. We have so much to get to, so stick around with us here on 10,000 Pitches as we jump into that in just a minute. But until we do, once I find the right overlay here, let's talk about our friends over at Stimulus Athletic. If you are the coach or an owner, or you're a decision maker for a youth club, a lower league team, and you're getting ready for that summer season, let me tell you something. Your team or organization deserves custom quality jerseys. Don't roll out in the same blank Nike jerseys that you rolled out in last year. Get custom design jerseys that are going to fit well, that are going to be comfortable for your team to wear, and are going to look really freaking cool. And that not only your players are going to want to wear, but your fans are going to want to wear, your supporters are going to want to wear, your community is going to want to get their hands on this stuff. That's the type of quality work that Stimulus does with their jerseys and apparel. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, if that sounds like, man, that'd be cool if I could get some custom design jerseys for our summer season, or even looking ahead to your indoor season in the winter. Maybe you're a futsal program that plays in the winter. You don't have to be soccer. You could be soccer. They work with ultimate frisbee clubs. They work with futsal teams. They work with, a wide array of different teams and organizations in different sports. So check them out. StimulusAthletic.com is the website. They have a little get started button there, little form you fill out, tell them about your club. And that initial conversation, it's a consultation, if you will. It's free to have. You don't pay anything to have that initial conversation and have Stimulus tell you how they can get your team the custom look you deserve. So again, StimulusAthletic.com. You see it right there live. If you're listening, it's STIMULUS Athletic.com. And in that form, it's got a little, where did you hear from us? Make sure you let them know. Jeremy and Dom from the 10,000 Pitches podcast sent you. Huge thanks to Jason Mora and the team over at Stimulus Athletic for supporting us here on the 10,000 Pitches podcast and sodasoccer.com. Okay, deep breath. Let's jump into this lower league news. Kicks off with Minnesota Aurora. This is pretty historic. They've announced a deal with Fox 9 to broadcast all 6 home games this season on Fox 9 Plus. It was cool enough when we had the games on CBS Minnesota last year, being able to stream online.
Right.
But having local women's lower league soccer available over the air on Fox 9 Plus, they're the only USLW league team as of now to have a TV deal like this. I can only think of one other lower league organization that has a TV deal in place when you're talking about less than the professional level. And I believe Detroit City's women's team has a deal like this in place as well. But man, that's going to be awesome. And that's going to open up the availability to watch, if you're not heading out to TCO, people can just stumble across Minnesota Aurora matches now on TV, which is pretty freaking cool.
Oh, that's phenomenal. This is a really cool show of support from Fox 9. It's a really cool opportunity, like you said, to sort of get the team even more, as if they need any help with their branding, but to get the team even more out there in front of more eyes. Like you said, the idea that a person could just be browsing TV channels at home and randomly stumble upon some high level women's soccer is a pretty cool thing to be able to say about Minnesota, about the Metro. So yeah, really cool, really exciting. It's going to make it easier for everybody, I think, to some degree, to get access to the team, especially that sort of more like casual everyday market of just people that just are kind of looking for something to watch, looking for a game to watch in general. So yeah, no, really cool. I know how hard it is for, teams at this level or slightly below this level to get that, that love and care from media and all that sort of thing. So the fact that they've been able to build this relationship with Fox 9 to this point is just really cool, really encouraging, and I look forward to watching some of those broadcasts this summer.
Yeah, and I reached out to Marianne Davey, who is the SVP and GM of Fox 9, because I kind of wanted to just get some more context on their end. We heard from the club in the statement, and Fox 9 did kind of provide a little statement in the release about this. But I kind of wanted to get the sense of Fox 9's perspective of this. Did they approach Aurora, or did Aurora approach them? How long have these conversations been in place? What is the coverage going to be like? And she said, actually, and this is something that was interesting to me, and I guess not surprising in hindsight, but Minnesota Aurora has been approached like the entire time by local media outlets and local TV stations about having their matches on their channels. So it's not like Aurora is going door to door at TV stations asking, "Hey, will you put our games on TV?" It's actually the other way around, where it's the TV stations that are approaching the team, which is really cool. I really think that aspect of it should not be overlooked. And she had mentioned that they even reached out to the club before last season about putting a deal in place, but I think the CBS Minnesota deal had already been, it was far enough down the line where they couldn't make something happen. But to have it available over the air on Fox 9 Plus should not be overlooked. This is a huge significant step forward for Minnesota Aurora, for local women's soccer, for local lower league soccer. I could see this opening the doors for similar, if maybe not to that level, but similar things to happen with a Minneapolis City, for an example, where maybe they get some sort of broadcasting in place for their matches. I just think it's a cool thing. It could have some really positive snowball effects moving forward for how the local lower league soccer scene is covered, and obviously how women's soccer is covered in general. So if you're looking for Fox 9 Plus, here's kind of the rundown on where Fox 9 Plus broadcasts can be found. If you have Comcast, if you have Xfinity, it's channel 10/807. If you have DirecTV, it's channel 29. If you have Dish, it's channel 29. If you have Spectrum, it's channel 10. Mediacom, it's channel 10 or 803. And over the air is channel 9.2. So if you're like me and you have that digital antenna, that digital box, 9.2 is where you should be going to check out Minnesota Aurora home matches this year on Fox 9 Plus. Now, if you're not in the market or you're not in the broadcast radius for Fox 9, that's okay. You can check out these matches. They'll be streamed live at fox9.com, the Fox 9 YouTube page, and through Fox 9 Plus on Hulu with live TV, Sling TV, Tubi, Fubo TV, YouTube TV, you name it. You should be able to find these matches if you can't make it out to TCO Stadium for any of Aurora's home matches this year. Very, very cool. Also very cool. MNUFC 2. Man, did they start their season on a high note. The Loons blast Real Monarchs 3-0 on the road. And this MNUFC 2 team was pretty shorthanded as well. No Emmanuel Iwe, no Zaydan Bello, no Devin Paddleford. Missing quite a few guys. Yeah. Quite a few impact players for this team, right? I mean, it's only the best MNUFC 2 players that are getting called up to debut for the first team, right? Right. And they still just absolutely throttle Monarchs 3-0 on the road in Salt Lake. Just really impressive. Diogo Pacheco, 2 goals to start the campaign. Fred Emmings keeps a clean sheet with a few saves. Man, this MNUFC 2 team, they could be a lot of fun to watch here in 2023 if they can keep up this form.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a really wonderful start against, obviously we don't know how good Real Monarchs are going to end up being this year, but that's an organization that certainly knows how to put a soccer team together. I think they won the USL Championship within the last 3 years. Obviously a different league now, but it's an organization that knows how to put a soccer team together. So really encouraging to see Minnesota United to go on the road to them. By the way, a very snowy match. Yep. And Snow opener.
MNUFC teams, even at the MLS Next Pro level, cannot avoid the snow opener.
yeah, to see them thrive like they did, some really nice goals. Really cool to see some big performances from some local guys like Masanvi and Kone. So yeah, I mean, just really all positives for whatever up and down negatives may have been around the first team result this week. The second team result was about as perfect as it gets. So, and congratulations on the debuts, of course, to Kone and O'Driscoll as well.
Yep,
both of them started. Those are local guys, so really, really promising start to the season for Minnesota United too.
and promising from an academy player standpoint as well. I mean, a
Yeah.
handful of academy players having to come up and play this one. They only had 3 players available, 3 field players available off the bench. Did the Loons, and Kone, Cage Romanshin gets the assist on one of the Pacheco goals. Kone was sandwiched in the middle of the Pacheco goals. He scored as well. So it's really encouraging. This performance is really encouraging from a lot of perspectives. Obviously, we want to see MNUFC2 do well in the field. That this is a big win. It makes us optimistic for the rest of the season, strictly with their MLS Next Pro season in mind. But I mean, with a bunch of guys making their debut, academy players coming up, and to put together this kind of performance and the individual performances within that team performances from those players, it makes the future of the Minnesota United organization look a lot brighter as well when you have these guys able to perform at this level with this quality in this type of situation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really, and it was, you see in the Vancouver game, you see those flickers of potential, those moments of potential with the guys that did come up to that game. It's just really good to know that the wheels are turning on that development ladder between all these teams, between the first team, second team, and the academy teams, that you are seeing those pieces move up and down the ladder in an effective way. So, I mean, a lot of people have been wanting Minnesota United to get into this part of the game for a while and to kind of reinvest in the academy, get that second team, all that sort of stuff. And last year there was a lot of promising aspects to all that. It's really good to see those promising aspects really continue this season so far, a couple of games into the MLS season at least. And with this first game for MLS Nets Pro. So yeah, it's just really good to see the club continuing to do a good job of building up all those resources and like you said, hopefully paints a very bright picture for the future.
Most definitely. So MNUFC2 back at it on Sunday. They are also going down to St. Louis. They'll take on St. Louis City 2 Sunday at City Park. So that should be a fun one there as well. All right, let's go to the men's lower league scene here, Dom. UPSL schedule is out. Week 1 is April 29th and 30th. FC Minneapolis hosts St. Paul Blackhawks. Maplebrook hosts Worthington Community. Aurora hosts Minneapolis City. St. Croix makes the trip to Granite City, and Twin City hosts Superior City. This should be a lot of fun this season in the UPSL. Now 2 local UPSL divisions as well. You have a league in the Premier Division, and you have a league in the First Division, if you will. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But what we're talking about right now, obviously, is the Premier Division with some of those teams and names and a couple of new additions, obviously, with Worthington Community and Twin City and Superior City. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how where the hierarchy lies with some of these, the FC Minneapolis, the Vloras, those teams that have really been here for a while, even Minneapolis City from a UPSL perspective, those teams that have really been in that league and have performed well in that league. You have so many newcomers that it's hard to know where things are going to shake out, obviously, before the season even starts. And I think that makes it all the more exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of fun things in this first week. First of all, you have all the new teams are on the road, which is St. Croix as well. So that's a really interesting challenge. A little bit of trial by fire. Side note, Austin Villa don't play this week because there's an odd number of teams, so they have the bye. But and then you get this really fun first week matchup: Vlora, Minneapolis City. Obviously, the 2 teams that were the title contenders last year and have more or less been through the recent history of the league in Minnesota. So just a lot of fun things to pick up there. Yeah, a lot of storylines this season. You have Minneapolis City, who no longer have to worry about the NPSL. So the UPSL is their entire secondary project. What does that mean for the strength they can put in the league? At the same time, it feels like a lot of the rest of the conference is going to be more competitive than it might have been in the past. A lot of interesting projects coming in. You got historic academies like the St. Paul Blackhawks coming in. So just a lot of interesting question marks, interesting things to think about for the season. So really looking forward to watching. Looking forward to this opening weekend. Planning to go to at least 1 or 2 games. And just looking forward to the UPSL continuing to grow. It's a league that started very humbly here with a couple teams that had to basically spend all year traveling to Wisconsin for games. And it's really cool to see it really develop into its own entity now with a whole list of clubs and as you noted, a whole second division as well that we'll be talking about through the year as well. But looking forward to these first matches.
Speaking of Minneapolis City, former Crow and Med City player Tyler Oliver has been named head coach of Hamlin men's soccer, so congrats to him. Deportivo U2FC announced as Minnesota's latest member of the UPSL's first division, expected to play in the second tier of the league, along with 1826 Academy, Bateau, etc. Powderhorn AFC win the Minneapolis City Futures League with Yash Mishrasagar as the MVP. And then Minneapolis City announced more players, including Shattuck St. Mary's alum James Gardev, Wayzata's Joe Highfield, and he is actually committed to the University of Portland. So a couple of big signings for the Crows as they build out that USL League 2 roster ahead of the summer. And then amateur cup teams have been announced for Region 2 of the USASA Region 2 Amateur Cup. One Minnesotan club with Vlora FC, they're able to enter because of their MASL side. If you recall, there was a bit of a disconnect there between UPSL and the USASA. So no UPSL teams are able to enter the tournament this year. But since Vlora does have an MASL team, they are eligible, which will be exciting to have that Minnesota presence there. And then you have 5 Wisconsin clubs: Honduras FC Majors, United Serbian Bavarians, of course, Bateau FC, and Dakota Young Stars are listed as a Wisconsin team because they have joined Wapassel. So that's why that is in there that way. First round matchups, you have Vlora and the Young Stars, which is a really cool matchup of teams that we cover here on the podcast. Bateau versus Honduras FC, United Serbian versus Chicago House, which should be interesting. And then additional area clubs enter in the later rounds with, obviously, no surprise, Bavarians getting a bye into the later rounds as well. Any thoughts on these happenings specifically, Don, before we move on?
Just excited to see what these local teams can do in the Amateur Cup. Vlora feel like, even if it's, obviously it's the MASL team, it's not the UPSL team, but obviously an organization that knows how to fight, how to compete. So really looking forward to seeing what they can do. It is cool that their first match will be sort of a little reunion with the Dakota Young Stars, who of course play in Wapassel now. So that'll be an interesting little setup there. Also just going to see how sort of historic teams like United Serbian and Bavarians do. Always interesting commodities in this league. And I guess just a quick note on the Tyler Oliver news. It's just cool to continue to see so many NPSL North or USL League 2 or UPSL now as well players moving into the coaching world. He's already been coaching, but to get that next step to a long-term head coaching position like that is a huge achievement for him. So congratulations. And it's just really cool to see a lot of guys. And it's nice for me because it's kind of the guys that I entered the league knowing and learning about in 2017, 2018, 2019. Seeing a lot of these guys are coaching their colleges, they're coaching maybe high schools or academies, they're doing different coaching work. It's just really cool to see. His brother, of course, the other Oliver, also does that as well. I believe he's still at Gustavus. So, just really cool to see him continuing that story. So, congratulations, Tyler.
Yeah, that's again just really cool to see guys grow through these systems and evolve, and then eventually, a lot of them do end up becoming coaches, which is cool to see them take that next step and continue to make an impact in the world of soccer, even when their playing career might be over. Other news, this was, maybe I would even call it a historic weekend for Minnesotan born players or Minnesotan bred players in the pros. Not only did Minneapolis City's Rory O'Driscoll, sign his first professional contract, with MNUFC 2, and then start and debut for MNUFC 2. But you also had Herbert Ndele making his pro debut for North Texas in a 1-0 win over LAFC 2. Xavier Zenge making his pro debut in a 1-1 win, 1-1 penalty kick win, I should say, for Crew 2 against the New York Red Bulls second team. Michael Vang played two games for the Lao national team this week. It was a 2-0 loss to Nepal and a 2-1 win over Bhutan. He played the full 180 minutes in those matches. Very cool. Mukwele Akale scored and made team of the week again for South Georgia Tormenta. And this weekend, his goal, which was a banger, you should go look at it, actually made Sports Center top 10 plays, which is awesome. Fantastic. And then Micah Burton, the 17-year-old who has represented the U.S. Youth National Team, Mounds View's own, he has signed a contract with Austin FC 2. Unbelievable to see kind of all of this happening in the same weekend. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in accounting O'Driscoll, 6 players with Minnesota ties, either signing their first professional contracts or making their professional debuts or making their national team debuts, or sometimes, or 2 of the 3 in the same weekend. I'm almost at a loss for words to describe how cool and historic this is.
And then you throw in, well, obviously Fred Emmings in goal for Minnesota too. You throw in Leo Kane, who is of Champlain Park High School. You throw in, Emmanuel Iwe, obviously. It's just been such a cool week. We both ended up making lots of posts about this on Twitter. But it's just been such a cool week for Minnesota talent. Side note to this, but you have your Jackson Ewells starting the MLS, for San Jose. It's just been a week full of Minnesota-based players, whether they're born here or moved here young, doing their thing and impressing at various levels. So, yeah, that's really awesome to see. And it's that kind of news, that kind of progress, that kind of opportunity for these guys that kind of makes all of this it's what motivates all of this. It's what keeps this interesting. And really worth writing and digging into. So it's very encouraging to continue to see a lot of these cool moves coming from guys that have done lower league, guys that have gone abroad like Akale and had these journeys and come back to the States. Guys like Michael Vang, who didn't go to college, he didn't play college soccer. He's got taken his own path and done very well with it. So just all these interesting stories, all these different communities represented, all these different parts of the metro or the state. It's just all really cool, all really encouraging. So congratulations to everything all these guys achieved, and looking forward to seeing a lot more of it through 2023.
Yeah, keeping a close eye on these guys, obviously, through the 2023 season, and looking at Mukwele Akale specifically. If he keeps this up, I can't imagine a year from now him still being in USL League One. I have to imagine he'll find himself at a top tier, if it's not MLS, somewhere else, because he has shown, he played for Valencia, for Pete's sakes, so he's shown that potential, and the fact that, just 7 months after kind of making his professional re-debut, if you will, with Tormenta being a huge factor in their USL League One championship run last year. And now starting the season with 2 goals, 2 team of the week appearances in 2 matches, getting himself on SC top 10. It's hard to imagine. It's hard to even quantify what the ceiling might be for this kid. Cause he's still just a kid. He's not, out of his prime, or maybe even in his full prime yet. Right. That's a scary thing. And, I have to imagine MLS teams, maybe even Minnesota United, because he is trained with the Loons, even just dating back to early last season, he was training with the Loons. I have to imagine close tabs are being kept on Mukwele Akale and his ascension for sure. All right, that is it for the news. Now it is time to make our picks, presented by BettorEdge. BettorEdge.com/Loons gets you $20 in your account, and you can make these picks with us. You can also enter our weekly MLS Pick'em competition at BettorEdge. We have free and paid versions of that as well. So Dom, let's go ahead and jump right into this here. Minnesota United and St. Louis City. It's not on the board here yet on BettorEdge. It should be by this weekend. But I looked up the odds for the Loons and St. Louis. It is hold on, lost it. Here, let's talk Loons and St. Louis City, and then we'll bring up what BettorEdge has on tap for the rest of the league. But Loons in St. Louis City, Minnesota United, a heavy underdog. So they are a plus 275 underdog, which means for every $100 you bet, you get 275 in return in that bet if you win. So again, you can translate that down. You bet $10, you'll make $27.50. Just do the math there. That's a significant underdog there. STL obviously 5-0, significantly favored in this one. The over under 2.5 total goals. Dom, where are you going in this one?
Oh man. Well, obviously it's tempting bet to go Minnesota because of the math, but
it would be a good value bet if you're looking to just keep your betting record, undefeated or clear of any losses. Then maybe you don't go there. But I think if you're looking for value, that's a good.
Yeah, I think it for something that feels a little more just sort of like this will probably happen. I would go the over 2.5 goals.
That's exactly what I'm thinking too.
I feel like between these two teams, and that's not me saying that like St. Louis is going to blow out Minnesota or anything like that. I just think between these two teams, there's surely going to be like 3-4 goals in this game.
Yeah.
So that's I think what I would put my money on.
Yeah, I'm going the exact same. I'm going over 2.5 total goals. I may even put a little bit on the Loons to win just because the value's there. But if term just kind of making my pick and staking my claim and saying this is what's going to happen, I'm going the over 2.5 as well, Dom. All right, so let's bring up the board at BettorEdge because we're going to make our picks and our locks, our locks and our upsets for the week. I'm going to go first with my lock, and let me just check the notes to make sure I'm not double dipping here. Okay, good. My lock is Columbus Crew over RSL, especially if Christian Ramirez gets on the field. Dom.
Oh my God,
we haven't talked about this yet. Superman, there's so much going on. Superman. A brace in his debut for Columbus Crew, his MLS re-debut, if you will, this past weekend. I believe they beat Atlanta 6-1.
Yep.
Just wild. Very, very cool to see Ramirez pick up right where he left off in MLS. Yeah, I think Crew's on another level right now. RSL is obviously struggling after that loss to St. Louis. And Crew's at home. I know they're only minus 134, which is not a significant favorite in this one. So yeah, to me, that's an easy one. Crew over RSL for my lock.
Yeah, for sure. Quick shout out Christian Ramirez. That was really awesome. Great to see he can still do it. And yeah, funny in retrospect that so many people doubted that he would be able to do well for the Crew. My lock, I feel like this is the easy one. This isn't me being that creative, is LAFC to beat Colorado. Colorado, to their credit, got a point this weekend against Austin, but I don't see them being able to compete with LAFC, who just another top team I'm sure can compete with LAFC. That Dallas game ended up being relatively close, but I just don't see Colorado doing it. So yeah, I got LAFC beating Colorado.
And you can see what I'm doing here if you're watching on the video portion. I'm betting EdgeCoin, which is basically playing money. You don't have to make real money bets if you kind of just want to get involved and make some picks and see what happens. You can do that for free on BettorEdge.com as well. So even though you get $20 in your account when you sign up at BettorEdge.com/Loons, you don't have to necessarily wager real money if you don't want to. We have free versions and paid versions of our MLS Pick'em competition as well. So keep that in mind. You don't have to bet to use BettorEdge. So again, BettorEdge.com/Loons gets you that free $20 in your account that you can use or not use depending on what you want to make happen. All right, Dom, let's go ahead and give us your upset here.
My upset is the Red Bulls to beat Atlanta.
Okay.
Now that's based, obviously Atlanta lost pretty badly in the weekend. Now I'm not basing it entirely on that because of course international break, a lot of different factors. But I think the Red Bulls have a history of upsetting Atlanta United. I think that Atlanta United are a little wounded in the moment. Both teams are going to be getting some players back. The Red Bulls have actually had a pretty good run since they lost their opening game of the season. They've gone undefeated since then. And so I could see them kind of sneaking an upset win at Atlanta.
All right, and my upset pick is actually kind of a big one. I'm just going one down here. Portland over FC Dallas. Portland's been kind of struggling a bit so far in the early part of the season, and they are going down to Dallas. But again, I don't know if I really trust FC Dallas, really at all. They have the 2-1 win against Sporting Kansas City. But other than that, they beat LA Galaxy 3-1 on March 4th. But, losing 2-1 against LAFC this past weekend, I'm not sold. I'm not sold on FC Dallas. They need to string a couple wins together and a couple multi-goal games together for me to really, start to get sold on them. So, and I think this is, for value and picking an upset. I really like this one. I like the Timbers over Dallas, even with some of the issues that Portland has had in the early part of this season as well. Now, again, you notice we can't bet draws on BettorEdge. But if a draw does happen in a match, you get your money back. It's seen as a push, no win, no loss, you get your money back. So there's kind of that safety net there as well for using BettorEdge. So again, those are our picks. BettorEdge.com/loons. Roll with us. You can bet against us. You can enter our MLS Pick'em competitions, real or play, real or free, I should say. Check those out. Again, BettorEdge.com/loons to get $20 in your account. Big thanks to our friends over at BettorEdge for allowing us to supporting our work and allowing us to have some fun using their platform on the podcast here. That'll do it for this week, Dom. Any final notes? I know we neglected to mention Christian Ramirez there till the end. Can you think of anything that we might have missed?
Yes, I do have one more thing.
Go for it.
I recalled that the Futsal Society's Whittier Park League ended this week.
Okay.
And, the Futsal League. And Immigrant FC won 27 points, 3 points ahead of AFC Richmond in second place. So shout out to all the folks having fun at Futsal Society. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got. Speaking of
AFC Richmond, have you been watching Ted Lasso?
I have been watching Ted Lasso.
Zava's Zlatan, right?
Oh yeah, they gave him the bun and everything.
The man bun. He's tall. I mean, he kind of looks like him.
Same facial hair. No, yeah, they literally just made Zlatan.
I mean, the Hatfield goal. I mean, come on. Oh, that's amazing. What a great character. Based off a real character who might even be more crazy than the character that's on the show.
What I hear, Zava's a toned down version of Zlatan. So.
Yeah, for sure. Usually it's turned up, but I don't know if you get more turned up than Zlatan Ibrahimovic. But anyways, big thanks to everybody who has tuned in, whether you're tuning in live or after the fact. We appreciate it. Our podcast numbers have been amazing so far this year. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and consuming the content. Again, patreon.com/SodaSoccer. As of now, still one patron away from our March goal. So if you want to help us make that happen, please do. Post Loons coming up on Saturday. Great content at sodasoccer.com all weekend long around match day. So make sure you're checking us out and supporting our work any way you can. He's Dominic Jose Bisogno. I am Jeremy Rushing. This has been the 10,000 Pitches podcast, and we will see you next week. Bye.